Hello, it's Molly Reamer with Bridget's Grove and 30 Days of Goddess, and this is just a really quick video about the concept of questions of the year. So you're probably familiar with words of the year, like choosing a single word to guide, inspire, and nurture and encourage your year to encapsulate what you want to bring forward into that year. Well, I am intrigued too by the concept of questions of the year, and that is the idea that we have kind of guiding questions in our lives, things that recur, questions that if we live them can help us express our true self, can help us walk into our magic, can help us bring our gifts forward, can help us inhabit like the truest version of our lives. So with the idea with questions of the year, there is something to consider here, which is, there's a quote from Danielle Laporte that's called "How You Listen," that says, "How you listen is how you live." So what are you listening to? You know, is it the media? Is it your inner voice of criticism? Is it your inner critic? Is it the voice of inspiration? How you listen is how you live. And so sometimes questions can be, sometimes we don't like to have questions. And Jennifer Loudon invites, in her book, The Comfort Secrets for Busy Women, she invites us to consider what the shape of our lives is right now. Is it a mud flat? Is it an ocean? Is it a river? Is it a mountain? Is it a desert? Is it a rainbow? Is it a fertile field? Like, what's the shape of our lives right now? And to also consider what it would be like to hold the unknowing inside, to not need answers, but as Rilke would say, to live our way into to live the questions, and in so doing, perhaps live our way into the answers at some point. So what is your question of the year? Your question of the year might relate to your word of the year. It might embody your word of the year, or it might be a different question. It might be the question that can shape and guide your choices and your actions, even your own work. What is your question of the year? And I find that listening for your questions then provides the action or the answer. So the question becomes, if you were actually living this question, what would you do next? If you were actually living this question, what would you do next? How would you act? What would you feel? What would you know? What would you understand? And so for me, my question of the year is not actually related to my word of the year. Instead, it is, what would happen if I lived my magic? What would happen if I lived my magic? And this question became clear to me, or emerged for me, because I kept thinking, like, what I really want to do is live my own magic. Like, that's what I want to do, is I want to live my magic. And so then I thought, well, the question is, how do I do that? Or what would happen if I lived my magic? So when I ask myself that question, it points the way into the next action. So your question might be, how can I bring my most authentic self into my life? You know, how can I express my most authentic self? So that question then opens the doorway to the next action. If I was being my most authentic self right now, what would I do? So for me, if I was living my magic right now, what would I do? What would I choose? How would I feel? What would I understand? Where would I go? What would I change? So the question of the year opens the door into all these other questions, all these other possibilities, all these other experiences. So what is your question of the year? What guiding question is shaping you and nourishing you and encouraging you, and indeed pushing you forward, pushing you to grow, to deepen, to understand? And what would happen if you lived that question? So that is what I wanted to invite you to consider, is what is your question of the year? What is your question of the year? And what would you choose differently if you were living that question? So, and then I'm going to close with a little quote from Ann Wilson Schaaf, which says, "The earth itself responds to our listening and sends us the whispers that only the practiced ear can record." The earth itself responds to our listening and sends us the whispers that only the practiced ear can record. May you question and may you listen. Thanks so much for being here. Bye-bye.